Storms don't destroy nations. Storms expose what the nation was built on. Say it with me. Storms don't destroy nations. Storms expose what the nation was built on. Write that down. Because if you don't settle this in your spirit, you will keep blaming wind for what neglect built into your walls. Say it out loud. Pressure reveals structure. Tell your neighbor, the test is not the problem, the test is the proof. When I say storm, I'm not only talking about wind and water. A storm is any pressure event, an economic shock that empties shelves and exposes greed, a pandemic that tests systems and motives, polarization that turns neighbors into enemies, corruption, scandals that pull back the curtain on institutions, crime waves that reveal unparented streets and unprincipled hearts, war that measures whether our unity is shallow or substantial, earthquakes and floods that check the integrity of our codes, misinformation that swirls like a cyclone to see if we built on truth or on trends. These are storms. They are teachers. They are x-rays. They don't fabricate fractures, they find them. The proper explanation is the storm was too strong. It was too much, Pastor. No one could have seen this coming. Listen to me. The corrective is this. The foundation was too weak, too divided, or never built. Stop magnifying the wind and start measuring the footing. Jesus said in Matthew 7:24-27, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man, and great was its fall. That's Matthew 7. The house didn't stand because of the weather report. It stood because of obedience to a blueprint. Now listen, if storms expose blueprints, we must ask, what is the blueprint of a nation? A nation is not dirt. A nation is an agreement. Write that down. A nation is not geography. It is a governed idea. Say it. A nation is an idea made visible. It is a collective covenant about why we exist, what we value, how we behave, and who we are, translated into culture, codified into law, embodied in institutions, and stewarded by leaders. Borders without belief are just fences around confusion. Tell your neighbor, the map is not the nation, the mindset is. Let me define this with precision so you can carry it into the storm. Stability is sustained order in public life, produced by shared values, protected by just laws, enforced by credible institutions, inspired by trustworthy leadership, birthed by a clear national purpose. Write that entire sentence down. Don't shorten it. Every word is a pillar. If you pull out purpose, leadership starts imitating power. If you pollute leadership, institutions become partisan. If institutions lose credibility, law becomes selective. If law is selective, values fragment. If values fragment, order collapses. Stability is not an accident. It is a sequence. Say sequence. This is the purpose to leadership ladder applied to societies. Leadership is the capacity to influence others through inspiration, not manipulation, generated by a passion, motivated by a vision, born from a conviction, produced by a sense of purpose. Turn it upside down. Start from the bottom. Purpose births conviction. This is why we exist. Conviction gives rise to vision. This is where we're going. Vision ignites passion. This is the fire to endure storms. Passion fuels inspiration. This is the capacity to make others see what you see. Inspiration creates influence. This is voluntary followership. Influence produces leadership, not a title, a trust. That's how a nation grows leaders. If purpose fractures, manipulation rushes in to fill the vacuum. When a nation forgets why it exists, microphones get louder and meaning gets quieter. Don't confuse position with leadership. Officials can sit in office while leadership is absent in the nation. You can have titles with no trust, speeches with no spirit, platforms with no principles. When inspiration disappears, manipulation multiplies. That's when you get policy by panic, law by headlines, unity by hashtags, and vision by slogans. Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, the people cast off restraint. That means without a revealed, shared idea of our destination, boundaries break, discipline dissolves, and order decays. Vision is not a poster. It is a governor of behavior. It tells the people what to say yes to and what to say no to without a policeman present. So what is culture? Culture is the daily behavior of a people driven by their shared values. Law is culture written down. Institutions are culture with an office and a budget. Leadership is culture with a voice and a face. And purpose is culture's womb. This is why Psalms 11:3 asks, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? Foundations are not cement first, they are convictions first. If the conviction is confused, the Constitution will be compromised. Are you hearing me? Genesis 1:28 is not a nursery rhyme. It is the first national charter. Be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, have dominion. This is not just for individuals. It is for civilizations. Be fruitful, produce value that did not exist before. Multiply, replicate your value through systems and education. Replenish, distribute value so no region is starved of it. Subdue, set standards, set order, set boundaries that preserve what you produced. Have dominion, stability, sustainable influence, predictable peace. The world doesn't eat seeds, it eats fruit. So nations must become fruitful, produce justice, produce trust, produce competence, produce creativity. Stop consuming more hope than you create. Produce something a child can trust, a widow can rely on, a stranger can understand. Let me give you a picture. Years ago, I visited a little island community after a violent storm. The roofs were gone, but the people were sweeping the streets at sunrise. No one told them it was culture. Their elders had a saying, we rise with the sun to kiss the land. That's purpose expressed in habit. The law on that island didn't have to fine people for little values, preempted violation. Institutions were respected because they were credible. They showed up first, not on election day. And the leaders, they walked not to cameras, but to the elderly who needed water. You cannot storm destroy that. You only reveal it. Contrast that with a city where every announcement is a performance, where laws are enforced by popularity, where institutions serve parties and not people, and where the only time you hear we is in a slogan. That city was collapsing before the wind came. The storm merely published the autopsy. Here's the correction we need. Stop outsourcing national definition to politicians. Nations are defined by purpose, not by parties. Purpose is discovered, not invented. It comes from the Creator who said, let them have dominion, Genesis 1:26. Dominion is not domination. It is responsible stewardship of a defined domain. So what is our domain? What is our whopper? That unique contribution we bring to humanity. Every great nation in history mastered a domain. Some mastered sea trade, some mastered education, some mastered technology, some mastered justice systems. You were born to master something. So was your nation. Write this down. Dominion without definition is danger. If you try to rule without a reason, you will rule people instead of problems. Leaders who cannot define purpose must resort to controlling people because they cannot inspire participation. Vision over sight. Sight says the poles are down, change the message. Vision says the purpose is clear, stay the course. Sight says the numbers are red, cut the roots. Vision says the roots are healthy, prune and replant. Politicians who live by sight manipulate. Leaders who live by vision inspire. Tell your neighbor, stop managing optics, start managing origins. So let me put it together like the backbone it is. Stability is not an act of God alone. It is an application of God's order. Stability is sustained order in public life, produced by shared values, protected by just laws, enforced by credible institutions, inspired by trustworthy leadership, birthed by a clear national purpose. If the nation is an idea made visible, storms are not your enemy. Storms are your exam. They will ask, is your idea rooted or is it only a slogan? Is your constitution embodied or is it only a document? Are your values lived or are they only laminated? Write that down. Storms separate creed from culture. Now hear me with hope. If storms reveal, they also invite. If you can define purpose, you can repair leadership. If you can restore values, you can renew law. If you can require justice, you can rebuild trust. If you can dignify institutions, you can call forth stability. And if you can inspire again, you can lead again. We will trace how cracks become breaks. But remember this as we go. Nations don't fall in a day, they forget in a day and neglect over years. And nations don't rise by magic, they rise by meaning, made visible, practiced daily, protected faithfully, and led by people who prefer inspiration to manipulation. Say it with me. Our nation is an idea made visible, and by God's grace, we will make that idea true. Collapse is not a bang. It is a leak that you ignored until the floor gave way. Say that with me. Collapse is a process, not a moment. Pressure does not invent failure. Pressure accelerates what neglect already started. Jesus said, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself will not stand. Matthew 12:25. That word divided is the story underneath every headline you are reading. Now let me walk you through the sequence so you can recognize it early and reverse it intentionally. It begins with confusion of purpose. When a people can no longer answer, why do we exist? They lose their compass. Purpose is the bottom of the ladder. When you kick it out, everything above starts wobbling. In that vacuum, moral fog seeps in. Judges 21:25 describes it. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. When sight replaces vision, preferences replace principles. In the fog, we stop agreeing on right and wrong. We start negotiating it. Write that down. Once truth is up for bid, the highest bidder owns your behavior. From moral fog, we slide into lawlessness, or its twin brother, selective justice. Lawlessness is obvious, breaking the law with impunity. Selective justice is more dangerous, keeping the law for friends and bending it for allies. Proverbs 11:1 says, dishonest scales are an abomination to the Lord. When scales are tilted, the public learns two lessons. First, crime pays if you have the right connections. Second, obedience is for fools. In calm, you may tolerate a tilted scale. In crisis, that tilt becomes a landslide. Small ethical compromises become structural failure under stress. The hairline crack you ignored in peacetime becomes the fracture that splits the bridge when the convoy crosses in wartime. Are you hearing me? Next comes institutional distrust. When laws feel elastic and values are foggy, people stop believing the referees. Courts are questioned. Police are suspected. Media becomes a marketplace of manipulation. Schools become battlegrounds of ideology. Hospitals become politics with stethoscopes. Write this down. Trust is the currency of civilization. Counterfeit it long enough, and the economy of cooperation crashes. Once trust drains, citizens stop giving the benefit of the doubt. They hoard it for their own. Then we retreat into tribal identity. Instead of neighbors, we see enemies. Instead of citizens, we see categories. We do not share a table, we build a camp. Polarization functions like structural rot in the beams of a house. Rot is quiet until weight arrives. You don't notice it at the picnic, you notice it when the storm sits on your roof. Polarization destroys our shared definitions. Truth becomes my truth. Justice becomes our justice. Responsibility becomes their job. Neighbor becomes my side. When words lose shared meaning, cooperation becomes impossible because sentences stop making sense to each other. Say this out loud. If we can't agree on definitions, we can't agree on decisions. Tribalism produces economic fragmentation. Investment is oxygen. Fear constricts breath. Capital hides, markets shrink, and producers stop risking because the rules are unpredictable. Black markets bloom where trust dies. Productivity starves where suspicion rules. The farmer keeps his seed in a jar. The shopkeeper keeps his goods behind iron. Creativity migrates to safer climates because genius refuses to build on quicksand. Genesis 1:28 said, be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, have dominion. In collapse, that sequence runs in reverse. You lose dominion. You cannot subdue chaos. Distribution breaks down, multiplication stalls, and fruitfulness ceases. The world doesn't eat seeds. the world eats fruit. But under fear, even the seed is buried, not planted. Economic fragmentation breeds social fear. People live by locks instead of laws, by alarms instead of agreements. We stop planning futures and start surviving days, and fear always seeks a savior. That's when the authoritarian temptation knocks or anarchy kicks the door. Give us a king to judge us and go out before us and fight our battles, Israel cried in 1 Samuel 8. God warned them. He will take your sons, take your daughters, take your fields, take your freedom. Authoritarianism promises relief from chaos while billing you with your liberties. Anarchy promises freedom from control while billing you with your safety. Both are evidence of foundational failure, not solutions. Listen to Galatians 6-7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. Nations reap what their foundations sow. Let me give you a picture. A coastal city boasted of its skyline, but beneath one famous tower, the concrete mix had been watered down years ago to save costs. It stood beautiful for decades, photo shoots, postcards, fireworks. Then came a minor tremor. Not an earthquake, just a shrug of the earth. Cracks spattered up the facade like veins of truth revealing a lie. Inspectors found salt in the steel, sand in the cement, and signatures on the invoice. Nobody complained when the contract cheated by 2%. It's just business, they said. In crisis, that 2% became a verdict. That is how nations fall. Inches ignored, then miles lost. Polarization is not passion, it is putrefaction. Passion defends a principle with humility. Polarization defends a tribe with hostility. Passion will debate to find what's true. Polarization will divide to win who's left. Write this down. A divided value system produces a divided future. Jesus prayed, sanctify them by the truth. Your word is truth. John 17. Shared truth sanctifies a people, sets them apart in order, unifies their conscience, and guides their laws. Without it, we revert to what Proverbs 29-18 warn. Without vision, people cast off restraint. Restraint is the rail on the cliff. Remove it, and speed becomes suicide. Now, here is the diagnostic mercy in all this. Because collapse is a sequence. Recovery is a sequence. If pressure accelerated neglect, wisdom can accelerate repair. But hear me, we don't start with politics. We start with foundations. Politics is the paint. Foundations are the footings. Psalms 11-3 still asks, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? The answer is not to shout at the storm. The answer is to rebuild the footings. Purpose first, values next, then law and justice, then leadership, then responsibility, then unity and identity, and finally productivity. That's the checklist we will walk through. We will not curse the darkness. We will install the wiring and flip the switch. So don't despair at the diagnosis. Take dominion over your domain. Say it. Pressure won't define me. Purpose will. Say it again. I refuse the fog. I choose the foundation. Every small act of integrity and calm becomes structural strength in crisis. Every just scale today becomes public trust tomorrow. Every bridge you reinforce now will carry the convoy later. The storm is not your sentence, it is your syllabus. Class is in session. Get your pen ready, because next we repair the first footing purpose. Purpose is the first footing. Say it. Purpose is the first footing. Write that down. Purpose is the why that governs the how. When purpose disappears, a nation starts living by reaction instead of direction. Habakkuk 2:2 says, write the vision and make it plain, that he may run who reads it. You cannot run straight without a plane. Why? Isaiah 46:10 reveals the divine pattern, declaring the end from the beginning. God starts with the destination, then designs the route. Nations must do the same. If you don't define the end, every road becomes attractive and none is faithful. That is why policies keep changing. Slogans rotate like seasons. And people are exhausted because the pilots keep announcing turbulence with no destination. Purpose is not a program. It is the premise. Purpose precedes constitution, curriculum, and campaign. Let me say it this way. Purpose is the seed. Institutions are the tree. Laws are the branches. Services are the fruit. The world doesn't eat seeds. The world eats fruit. But if you bury the seed of why, you will starve the tree and then wonder why the branches are brittle. Genesis 1:28 is God's opening statement of human purpose. Be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, have dominion. That is not noise. That is a national charter. Be fruitful, produce value, not just opinions. Multiply, scale that value through systems, not just celebrity. Replenish, distribute value so no region is barren. Subdue, set standards that protect your value. Have dominion, sustained, stable influence. Write this down. Your why is the governor on your how. Without it, the fastest car goes in circles. How do you know when a nation has misplaced its purpose? The symptoms are everywhere. First, short-termism becomes a culture. Sight says, survive this quarter. Vision says, build the next generation. When sight rules, leaders manage headlines, not history. Budgets are written for news cycles, not for children's futures. Tell your neighbor, stop renting tomorrow to pay for today. Second, constant rebranding replaces definition. Every year a new slogan, a new logo, a new anthem of who we are because we forgot who we are. If you keep repainting a wall that's not plumb, the pictures will still hang crooked. Third, citizens are treated as consumers, not stewards. We market to them, we entertain them, we pacify them, but we do not equip them to govern themselves. Deuteronomy 6 says, teach these words diligently to your children when you sit, when you walk, when you lie down, when you rise. Education is supposed to be civic formation, not just career preparation. When purpose is absent, schools produce degrees without duty, skills without service, knowledge without nation. Fourth, spectacle is rewarded over service. We applaud the performance and ignore the quiet producer. Proverbs 14:23 says, in all labor there is profit, but idle chatter leads only to poverty. Write that down. Reward signals reveal purpose. If you pay for noise, you will get an orchestra of clamor. If you honor service, you will get a symphony of builders. Let me paint you a picture so you never forget it. There was a city called Halcyon. In 10 years, they changed their city motto 12 times. The city of tomorrow, future forward, together we rise, lights of the coast. Beautiful words. But no one could answer a simple question. Why are we here? They built a state-of-the-art stadium while their water system leaked. They launched fireworks, but not apprenticeships. They hosted summits on innovation, but graduated students who couldn't read their own ballots. Then a storm came, not wind, but recession. And the lights in the stadium went dark, the slogans looked like sarcasm, and the people realized they had been surviving quarters, not building quarters for their children. Contrast that with a village on the edge of a desert. They had one sentence on a stone at their gate. We exist to make gardens from sand. Every decision passed that test. Budgets funded irrigation before banners. Schools taught botany and business. Boys and girls learned how to compost, to trade water rights fairly, to resolve disputes under the fig tree. When drought came, they endured. When rain came, they expanded. Purpose made them predictable under pressure. So here are your diagnostic questions. And I want you to write them down. Ask them in your council meetings, your classrooms, your kitchens. Number one, what are we producing besides debate? Talk is not fruit. What tangible value, justice, safety, literacy, innovation, healthy families are we delivering? Number two, what future are we training children to build? If standardized tests are high, but civic trust is low, your curriculum is failing the country. Number three, what do we reward, service, or spectacle? Track your honors, your awards, your media minutes. If heroes are entertainers while servants are invisible, you are broadcasting your lost why. Number four, what problem on earth are we uniquely designed to solve? Nations have whoppers too. What's your whopper? If you cannot name it, you cannot master it. And number five, does every ministry, every agency, every school syllabus pass the purpose test? If not, prune it. Jesus said in John 15, every branch that bears fruit, he prunes that it may bear more fruit. Purpose gives you the courage to cut what is popular but pointless. Now let me confront a mindset that's killing nations. If you don't deploy yourself, you'll be employed. That's true of people. It's true of peoples. If a nation does not deploy its purpose, it will be employed by other nations' agendas. That is how you become a market, not a maker, a client state, not a covenant people. You end up importing identity and exporting raw talent. Write this down. Purpose immunizes you against manipulation. When you know why you exist, you can say no to money that requires your soul, no to trends that betray your children, no to policies that pad polls but mortgage posterity. Vision over sight, say it, vision over sight. Sight counts bodies at a rally, vision counts bridges built, contracts honored, widows protected. Sight asks, how do we look? Vision asks, who will we become? Sight celebrates a quarter's profit. Vision invests in a generation's prosperity. Joseph in Egypt saw 7 fat years and 7 lean years, not a news cycle, then built granaries for his grandchildren. That's vision. Write that down and staple it to your budget. Purpose also orders your pain. Listen to Paul. None of these things move me, nor do I count my life dear to myself, so that I may finish my course, Acts 20:24. Purpose gives endurance. Nations with purpose accept short-term sacrifice for long-term stability. They fix roofs when the sun is shining. They train reserve leaders in peacetime. They tighten ethics when no one is watching. Why? Because the course is clear. Without that, pain becomes panic, and panic writes policy. Now hear the bridge. Because we are building a staircase. When purpose is unclear, values become negotiable. And what is negotiable will be sold under pressure. Esau sold his birthright for stew because hunger shouted louder than purpose. Genesis 25:29-34, Hebrews 12:16. That is national policy without purpose, trading tomorrow for a bowl of today. If you don't settle the why, you will always sell it when you're hungry. A nation anchored in purpose can be patient in famine, principled in surplus, and predictable in storm. So I commission you to begin at home, at City Hall, at the school board. Articulate the why in one sentence. Put it on your gate, your syllabus, your strategic plan. Test every how against that why. If it doesn't serve the purpose, prune it. If it feeds the purpose, fund it. Say it. I am not a consumer. I am a steward. Say it again. I am necessary to my nation's purpose. John 18:37 records Jesus before Pilate. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world. If the king declared his cause, surely a people can define theirs. Purpose first, then everything else finds its place. Because when the why is clear, the winds can blow and the waters can rise, and you will not be tossed by reaction, you will be guided by direction. Now get your pen ready. Next, we secure the values that guard this purpose, because a purpose without values is a ship without a keel. If purpose answers why we exist, values answer how we agree to behave while we exist. Values are the invisible constitution. Write that down. Long before your parliament votes, your people have already decided what is tolerable and intolerable. Romans 2:15 says the law is written on their hearts, their conscience bearing witness. That's the invisible constitution. Proverbs 14:34 declares, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. The paper constitution is only as strong as the moral code that lives in the people. Tell your neighbor, the greatest courtroom is the conscience. Every nation has a moral code, even the ones that boast. We are neutral. There's no neutral ground. Neutrality is just an unconfessed creed. Write this down. What you subsidize, policy is catechism. Even silence is catechism. The question is not, do we have a moral code? The question is it coherent and shared? Amos 3:3 asks, can two walk together except they be agreed? If we cannot agree on right and wrong, we cannot walk together. And if we cannot walk together, we cannot build together. When a moral code fractures, the nation starts living on negotiated outrage. We get angry on schedule, not on principle. One behavior is evil this week and excusable next week, depending on the tribe of the offender. Isaiah 5:20 warned us, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. Stop calling it normal. Normal is not righteousness. Normal is what you got used to. Write that down and don't apologize for it. If you stare at a crooked picture long enough, your neck will tilt and you will swear the frame is straight. Righteousness, not trend, is the level. A fractured moral code always produces twin justice systems. One for friends, one for enemies. One for the powerful, one for the powerless. Deuteronomy 16:19 commands, you shall not pervert justice. You shall not show partiality, nor take a bribe. Partiality is legal bribery of the soul. In a fractured code, the mayor's nephew made a youthful mistake, but the vendor's son is a menace to society. The celebrity needs compassion, while the single mother should have known better. Inspectors measure the small shop with a micrometer and the corporate tower with a rubber band. Write this down. When values break, scales tilt. When scales tilt, people stop believing the weights. When people stop believing the weights, they start bringing their goods to the market of society. Let me show you how this corrodes trust and wealth. Shared values create predictable behavior. Predictable behavior creates trust. Trust reduces the cost of cooperation. Reduced cost of cooperation produces prosperity. Say it slowly with me so you never forget the sequence. Values, predictability, trust, low cost, prosperity. Proverbs 11:3 says, the integrity of the upright guides them. Integrity is a guidance system. Where there is no integrity, you need more locks, more lawyers, more layers of verification, more insurance, more guards, more cameras, more permits, more signatures, more delays. Every extra lock is an invoice for the absence of virtue. The world doesn't eat seeds. The world eats fruit. But where trust is bankrupt, even seed is hoarded, not planted. Consider two towns. In Cedarfield, the invisible constitution was clear. We keep our word. We don't take what isn't ours. We tell the truth without a lawyer present. We return what we borrow. We help our neighbor before the news arrives. Shopkeepers leave a produce stand unmanned at noon with a jar labeled pay what you owe, and the jar is full of dust. Deals close on a handshake and a simple paper promise. Young people start businesses without needing a legal library to protect them from predators. The police show up, not to intimidate, but to assure. That town pays less for locks and lawsuits and more for libraries and laboratories. In Rivermark, the values are fogged. The honest man hires security to deliver cash across town. Contracts require 5 witnesses and still get broken if the tribe changes. Permits appear faster for friends than for citizens. People invest in fences, not futures. Which town will multiply? Which will keep its brightest children? Write this down. Trust attracts talent. Suspicion exports it. Values must be taught, not assumed. Deuteronomy 6 told us to teach diligently to our children when we sit, when we walk, when we lie down, when we rise up. Teaching values is not indoctrination, it is civilization. Psalm 15 sketches a national citizen. He who walks uprightly and works righteousness and speaks the truth in his heart, who does not slander with his tongue, who keeps an oath even when it hurts. That's curriculum. That's how you build a people you can predict, and prediction is the foundation of planning. Leaders can only plan a future when they can predict the behavior of the people they lead. Tell your neighbor, predictability is not control, it is character on schedule. Values create reflexes under pressure. Daniel 1-8 says, Daniel purposed in his heart not to defile himself before the test. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the furnace with a reflex. We will not bow. Daniel 3. Joseph said no to Potiphar's wife without a committee. His conscience had a constitution. Nationally, reflex sounds like this in crisis. We do not loot, we lift. We do not exploit the widow, we escort her. We do not sell truth for trending, we tell it and stand. In storms, rules are strained. Only pre-committed values keep order when the lights go out. Write it down. Values are the rails. Crisis is the train. If there are no rails, momentum becomes massacre. Now hear my correction in love. Stop anointing dysfunction as culture. That's just how it is here. No, that's how it has been tolerated here. Jesus rebuked the Pharisees for tithing, mint, and neglecting the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. Matthew 23. Weightier matters are values. If your ceremonies are precise, but your conscience is polluted, your nation will be ornamental but unstable. Don't clap for hypocrisy in a choir robe. Don't excuse deceit because the market is tough. Righteousness is not a Sunday suit. It is Monday standard. So what do? Start with your domain. Write your code. 5 to 10 non-negotiables for your house, your school, your business, your department. Post them where eyes can see and hearts can hear. Include Psalm 15's line, we keep our word even when it hurts. Include Proverbs 20:23. Differing weights are an abomination to the Lord. Include this one. We tell the truth without a microphone. Put teeth in it, rewards for virtue. Consequences for violation. Celebrate the janitor who returns the wallet more than the executive who landed the deal. Why? Because reward signals preach faster than sermons. Say it out loud. I live by a code. I am not for sale. Say it again. My integrity is my insurance. If you don't deploy your values, you will be employed by vices. You will rent your conscience to the highest bidder and call it networking. No. Kingdom people produce virtue. The world doesn't eat seeds. It eats fruit, justice fruit, honesty fruit, neighbor love fruit. And when you plant those values locally, you are laying track for the train of national destiny to run straight. Leaders will find it easier to inspire. Institutions will find it easier to be believed. Law will have a moral spine to hang on. That brings me to the next footing. Values without laws are wishes. Wishes don't hold back floods. Statutes do. But hear me, laws without values become weapons, not walls. We will take the invisible constitution you're writing in your domain and show how to translate it into just consistent enforcement. Because selective enforcement is national corrosion, and justice must flow like a river. Get your pen ready. We're about to move from conscience to courtroom. From conscience to courtroom. Now hear me. Law is the public promise of fairness. Justice is the consistent delivery of that promise. Say that with me. Law is the promise. Justice is the performance. Proverbs 29:4 declares, by justice a king gives the land stability. Stability is not magic. It is the fruit of predictable fairness. When a people can expect the same rule for friend and foe, rich and poor, powerful and powerless, they exhale. Contracts are signed. Neighbors cooperate. Creativity takes risks. Write this down. Fair law invites voluntary obedience. Unfair law requires force. God's standard has never been unclear. Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Justice is doing right by everyone the same way every time, even when it is inconvenient for your tribe. Leviticus 19:15 says, you shall do no injustice in judgment. You shall not be partial to the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty. That's balance. The poor don't get a pass to steal because they are poor, and the mighty don't get a pass to steal because they are mighty. The scale doesn't ask your last name. The danger is when enforcement becomes tribal. Citizens stop complying voluntarily and start complying by fear. And here Romans 13:3. Rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. If the honest are terrified and the crooks are comfortable, your system is inverted. Write it down. When justice becomes negotiable, unity becomes impossible. You cannot be one people if outcomes depend on who you know. Negotiable justice is a divorce paper disguised as policy. Let me outline 3 breakdowns so you can spot the rot and repair it. First, impunity, no consequences. Ecclesiastes 8:11 warns, because the sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Delay and denial intoxicate the corrupt. When the connected siphon contracts, law defines, forge permits, and nothing happens, or it happens so late, it becomes theater. Society learns a wicked lesson. Crime pays if you have insulation. In that climate, the shopkeeper says, why bother? The honest official says, why risk? The young graduate says, why stay? Impunity is not mercy. It is malpractice. Mercy follows justice. It never replaces it. David spared Saul's life, but he did not rewrite the law to call Saul's javelin a misunderstood gesture. Are you hearing me? Second, overreach, punish the small. Jesus rebuked the Pharisees for straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel, Matthew 23:24. Overreach is when inspectors crush the sidewalk vendor for a missing stamp, while the cartel of monopolies negotiates exemptions over lunch. It is when a teenager faces the full fury of the code, while the influential get diversions and press releases. It is when a village farmer is fined into bankruptcy for a fence 3 inches off the line, while a corporation reroutes a river with a waiver. Overreach breeds bitterness. Bitterness breeds non-compliance. Non-compliance demands more force. More force produces more resentment. That is a doom loop. The law must be even-handed, not heavy-handed. The blindfold of Lady Justice is supposed to prevent peeking, not pretend blindness toward the powerful. Third, confusion rules so complex they cannot be respected. Isaiah 10:1-2 says, woe to those who decree unrighteous decrees, who write misfortune, which they have prescribed. Complexity is a quiet corruption. When regulations are a maze, only the well-lawyered survive. The rest stumble into fines without intent. Write this down. Clarity is kindness. Confusion is control. If citizens need a consultant to understand how to be lawful, the law is serving itself, not the people. Confusion is the breeding ground of selective enforcement, because where no one is sure, the enforcer chooses often by bias, sometimes by bribe. That is why Moses heard God say, write for yourself these words plainly, and Deuteronomy commands, make it known to the people. Law must be legible to the governed. Now, what does a healed justice ecosystem look like? It looks like this. Simple standards, publicly known. Equal application regardless of face or fame. Timely process and proportionate consequence. Open accountability for enforcers. And accessible redress for the wronged. Amos 5:24 pictures it perfectly. Let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Streams don't trickle for friends and flood for enemies. They flow where gravity guides. Gravity, in this sense, is statute plus conscience. Your visible and invisible constitutions aligned. Let me paint you a picture so you never forget it. In Harbor Gate, there were 2 stop signs on the same street. One in front of the bakery, one at the edge of the yacht club. If you rolled past the bakery line, the ticket was waiting before your wheels stopped. If you cruised past the yacht line, the officer waved, have a good day, sir. One day a school bus braked late at the bakery sign to avoid a stray dog. The fine arrived. The same week, a convoy from the club sped through and clipped a cyclist. The report disappeared. Harbor Gate stopped obeying, not because they hated rules, but because the rules hated them. Then a storm swelled the sea and chewed the shoreline. The people needed a sandbag brigade. But the bakers said, why should we show up? When we needed fairness, you didn't show up. Write this down. Selective justice is slow collapse. It doesn't explode. It erodes commitment until, in crisis, there are no volunteers left. Justice also affects productivity. Romans 13 says rulers are ministers to the good. Good people invest when ministers of justice are predictable. Investors hate roulette. Builders hate ambushes. Talent hates poison. Show me a nation where outcomes in court are for sale, and I will show you a nation exporting its brightest. The world doesn't eat seeds, the world eats fruit. But fruit trees need fences that keep out thieves equally, whether they wear hoodies or cufflinks. So what must you do in your domain? Start with audit and alignment. Audit your rules. Are they simple, public, and necessary? If not, prune. Isaiah 28 says God teaches line upon line, precept upon precept. Your policy should read that way. Align your enforcement, pick 3 behaviors that matter most for safety and fairness, publish them, and enforce them equally for 30 days. People will test you. Stay equal. Create a no-peek protocol. Decisions made on facts without influence from names, donations, or trending heat. Post outcomes. Sunlight disinfects. Establish proportion punishment that fits offense. No crushing gnats or pardoning camels. Speed up. Due process. Justice delayed is order decayed. Train your officers, inspectors, and judges, not only in codes, but in character. Psalm 82 commands, defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Compassion and consistency can coexist. Tell your neighbor, tough on wrong, tender to people, true to the scale. And leaders, your integrity is the thermostat of the courthouse. If you call the prosecutor at midnight as a favor, you are teaching the nation that the back door is the main door. If you wink at your ally's violation and roar at your opponent's misstep, you are preaching tribal law from a pulpit labeled public office. Deuteronomy 16:19 again. You shall not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. Blindfold your eyes with principle, not patronage. Citizens will follow a fair referee. They will fight a biased one. Hear the pivot now. Because the structure we are building requires the next pillar. Law requires institutions. Institutions require credible leadership. Statutes don't enforce themselves. People do. And in crisis, nations don't just need smart enforcers. They need trustworthy leaders who inspire shared sacrifice. Leadership is the capacity to influence others through inspiration, not manipulation, generated by a passion, motivated by a vision, birthed by a conviction, produced by a sense of purpose. We have anchored the purpose, codified the values, laid the promise of fairness. Next we must ask, who will carry this promise without peaking, without palming the scale, without selling the gavel? Get your pen ready. We are marching from the courtroom to the captain's chair. Because justice on paper demands leaders we can trust under pressure. We just walked from the courtroom to the captain's chair. Now fasten your heart. Leadership is the capacity to influence others through inspiration, not manipulation, generated by a passion, motivated by a vision, birthed by a conviction, produced by a sense of purpose. You always start at the bottom, purpose, then conviction, then vision, then passion, then inspiration, then influence. Leadership is the result. Write that down. If you don't have purpose, you will reach for pressure. If you don't have conviction, you will borrow fear. If you don't have vision, you will hire propaganda. If you don't have passion, you will manufacture crises to keep people looking at you. That is not leadership, that is theater. Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, the people groan. How do you measure leadership? Listen to the sound of the people. Are they rejoicing because they are mobilized or groaning because they are manipulated? Manipulation multiplies in fearful populations. Fear is the counterfeit currency of insecure rulers. 1 Samuel 15 records Saul confessing, I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Fearful leaders create fearful nations. Write this down. Fear makes citizens cheap to buy and easy to bully. Inspiration makes citizens expensive to corrupt and hard to control. Jesus said in John 10, the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep, but the hireling, when he sees the wolf, flees. That is leadership under pressure. The wolf reveals who is a shepherd and who is a hireling. Storms don't create leaders, storms expose them. Let me expose the patterns of leadership failure so you can recognize and repent. First, image management over stewardship. In shallow times, some leaders build stages while bridges collapse. They schedule press conferences more faithfully than relief convoys. They change slogans every quarter, but never change systems. They commission logos while the lights are out. Write it down. Optics without outcomes is deception with a budget. Jesus cursed the fig tree because it had leaves with no fruit. Mark 11. Leaves are image. Fruit is service. The world doesn't eat leaves. The world eats fruit. Produce something. Second, blame shifting. In Eden, Adam said, the woman you gave me. In the palace, Saul said, the people made me do it. In modern halls, it sounds like this. The previous administration, the media, the outsiders, the insiders, the left, the right. Listen, leadership owns direction, not excuses. Say it. Leaders take responsibility. Tell your neighbor, rulers take credit. Leaders take blame. That's why David, when confronted by Nathan, said, I have sinned. Confession is not weakness, it is authority recalibrating to truth. Third, scapegoating. Scapegoating is a lazy leader's last sermon. When a nation loses purpose, it unites by hatred. Leaders without vision give the people an enemy instead of an assignment. Pharaoh did it. Let us deal shrewdly with them, and then made bricks without straw to exhaust imagination. Exodus 1:5. Write this down. When leaders remove purpose, they must increase pain to keep control. It is easier to rally mobs than to mentor citizens. But mobs cannot rebuild walls. Only neighbors can. Nehemiah never scapegoated a tribe. He assigned families a section of the wall. Nehemiah 3. That is leadership turning frustration into focused labor. Fourth, corruption as strategy. Deuteronomy 16:19 has already warned us. You shall not take a bribe. But some call bribes, coalitions, theft, efficiency, nepotism, trust, and kickbacks, relationship management. They tell you, this is how it works here. No, that is how collapse works anywhere. Write it down. What you call it won't change what it does. Corruption buys silence in the calm and sells you out in the storm. When the waters rise, corrupt networks save their own furniture while the people drown. Righteous leaders build arks. Corrupt rulers sell tickets to lifeboats that don't exist. Fifth, perpetual emergencies to justify control. Some leaders live on sirens. Crisis becomes a business plan. In the name of safety, they stretch power. For the sake of stability, they suspend process until further notice becomes forever. Ecclesiastes 3 says, there is a time for everything, including a time to return power to the people. Write this down. If you need chaos to stay important, you are not a leader, you are an addict. A true leader resolves storms and then rebuilds systems so storms don't own the calendar. Now here's why character matters more in storms. Skill manages calm. Integrity manages crisis. Proverbs 24:10 says, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Talent is a fine sailor on smooth seas. Storms recruit your soul. Under pressure, you don't rise to your potential. You fall to your principles. That is why Psalm 15's man who keeps an oath, even when it hurts, is a citizen and the leader you can plan a future with. The hireling flees, the shepherd bleeds. The politician performs. The leader pays. Write this down. Credibility is a savings account. Crisis is the withdrawal. If you didn't deposit honesty, humility, and consistency for years, the day of trouble will bankrupt your voice. So what does inspirational leadership do in the tempest? Let me give you 5 C's to tattoo on your spirit. Credibility. Tell the truth early, even when it is incomplete. Say, here's what we know. Here's what we don't. Here's what we're doing. Clarity. Name the problem without poetry. People can handle reality when it is plain. Consistency, align words, budgets, and behavior. If you call for sacrifice, you cut your own perks first. Courage, choose the right over the popular. Protect the unpopular truth bearer. Confront your own tribe first. Care, be present in the pain, not just in the camera frame. Nehemiah did all 5. He surveyed the ruins by night. Credibility, called the rubble by name. Clarity, refused the governor's food allowance. Consistency, challenged nobles who exploited their brother's courage and stood on the wall with the people, sword and trowel in hand. Care. Then he said, you see the trouble we are in. Come, let us build. Nehemiah 2:17. And the people replied, let us rise up and build. That is inspiration, shared sacrifice, birthed by shared vision. Let me bring it home with a picture. When Cyclone Mara struck coastland, 2 governors emerged in the headlines. One wore a branded jacket and held 3 microphones. He announced task forces, created hashtags, and blamed yesterday. He filmed supply trucks that didn't reach the hillside. He guarded his convoy with 10 cars and arrived late to every town. The people clapped on camera and cursed at home. The other governor laced boots at 4 a.m., opened a public dashboard with every dollar tracked, cut her salary, and redirected the staff party budget to tarps, slept 2 nights in the school gym with displaced families, and asked farmers, carpenters, and teenagers to sign up for shifts by neighborhood. She showed up where there were no lights and no logos. In 7 days, the hillside had power. In 70 days, the bridges were back. Over 90% of volunteers were locals. Write this down. Inspiration is efficient. Manipulation is expensive. Which governor had more degrees? Maybe the first. Which one had more integrity? The second. Skill manages calm. Integrity manages crisis. Say it again with me. Leaders take responsibility. Tell your neighbor, rulers take credit. Leaders take blame. If you want to measure a leader, watch who they protect and who they punish when things go wrong. John 10's good shepherd stepped forward. I lay down my life. The hireling steps back. It wasn't me, it was them. Listen, leaders go first, leaders eat last, leaders speak last, leaders apologize first, leaders pay the first price. Write that down and put it where your ego can see it daily. Practical steps for your domain, because every storm is local before it is national. Number 1, tell the truth fast. Don't spin, state. Number 2, set the standard by sacrifice. Cut your comforts before you cut your people. Number 3, assign clear roles. Inspiration without organization is frustration. Number 4, create visible wins. Small, early repairs, restore faith. Number 5, share credit like rain. Accept blame like a shield. Number 6, build other leaders. If everything depends on you, you are not leading. You are hoarding. Be fruitful, produce a result, multiply, produce more leaders, replenish, restore morale, subdue, bring chaos under process, have dominion, sustain the standard. That Genesis 1:28 ladder is not just for business, it is for governance in your house, your school, your department. And hear my correction wrapped in hope. Even great leaders cannot compensate for a culture that outsourced responsibility. Moses could not enter every tent. Nehemiah did not lay every brick. Jesus sent the 70, then the 12, then the 3, and then the 1 sent us all. A nation rises when citizens become stewards, not spectators. We are moving there next because leadership without followership is theater. Leadership with responsible citizens is transformation. Say it softly now and let it root. I am not waiting for a savior on a stage. I am a steward in my street. We will build the next pillar, responsibility, because inspiration must translate into ownership. When I come back to your domain, I don't want to see posters about leadership. I want to see people lifting, sweeping, planning, producing. The storm is not your sentence, it is your summons. Get ready, the next foundation is you. Responsibility, now we are touching the nerve. Listen to me, citizenship is not a seat in a stadium, it is a stake in a field. It is not a subscription to benefits. It is a stewardship of burdens. Rights are sacred, but rights without responsibility breed riots of entitlement. Galatians 5:13 says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh. Rather, serve one another in love. Write this down. Freedom is the space. Responsibility is the structure. Without structure, space becomes chaos. Without freedom, structure becomes prison. The kingdom calls you to both. Tell your neighbor, I am not just free, I am responsible. We have trained citizens to be consumers. Consumer citizens ask, what can I get for my taxes? Builder citizens ask, what can I contribute to my street? Remember my mantra, every problem is a business. The pothole is a product for someone who can organize people, materials, and a schedule. The underserved classroom is a platform for a retired engineer to mentor. The lidded pot is a startup for neighbors with gloves, bags, and 1 hour on Saturday. The world doesn't eat seeds, the world eats fruit. Consumer citizens hold seeds at rallies. Builder citizens plant orchards in neighborhoods. If you don't deploy yourself, you will be employed by someone else's agenda. Say it out loud. I deploy my gift for my community. Entitlement weakens resilience. It tells the soul, wait for rescue, then resent the rescuer. It trains you to clap at announcements and curse at delays. Dependence becomes political currency, keep you needy, to keep you near. Israel came out of Egypt by miracles, but the wilderness exposed the heart. Numbers 11-5 records their nostalgia for slavery. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost. Also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. At no cost. Slavery always says the soup is free because freedom is paid by your back. Write this down. When you outsource your survival, you will romanticize your bondage. God gave manna daily, not to make them dependent on heaven's bakery, but to teach discipline, timing, and gathering responsibility. He who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. Exodus 16. That's personal diligence, moderated by community fairness. Storms don't create paralysis. Storms reveal that entitlement already numbed our hands. So what does responsibility look like when it is healthy? Let me give you markers you can measure tomorrow. First, local problem solving. You don't need a title to fix a drain. You need a bucket and 2 neighbors. James 1:22, be doers of the word and not hearers only. If the bus stop is dim, call the office, yes, but also show up with solar lanterns until the post is repaired. Write this down. Stewardship looks for the quickest obedience you control. Second, volunteerism. Nehemiah did not publish a wall-building decree from a balcony. He assigned families by gates. Serve where you eat. Sweep where you shop. Teach where you live. If your child plays in the league, you chalk the field at least once this season. If your church prays for the school, you proctor exams or read with a second grader once a month. Luke 6:38 says, give, and it shall be given to you. Communities reap what they volunteer. Third, civic literacy. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Hosea 4-6. Ignorance is expensive. Read the charter. Learn how budgets move. Know when council meets and how to submit comment legally. Proverbs 4-7. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. Write this down. Shouting at what you don't understand is entertainment. Shaping what you understand is citizenship. Fourth, paying dues, yes, taxes, but also honesty, time, and truth. Romans 13-7 commands. Render therefore to all their dues. Tribute to whom tribute is due. Custom to whom custom. Fear to whom fear. Honor to whom honor. Don't steal the nation with petty theft and then curse the elite for grand theft. Integrity scales. If you evade the bus fare because nobody's looking, you are preaching corruption to your children. If you break rules when they inconvenience your plan, you are training your conscience to be negotiable when you hold power. Fifth, accountability in families. Strong nations are built on strong households. Deuteronomy 6 commands parents to teach diligently. When you sit, walk, lie down, rise. If the dinner table is silent and the screens are loud, don't expect Congress to fix your culture. Fathers, mothers, be faithful in little. Proverbs 27-23 says, be diligent to know the state of your flocks. Your first flock is your house. Set yours. Expect excellence. Reward honesty, discipline, rebellion. Family is the first parliament. 6, mutual correction without malice. Matthew 18 gives a process. Go to your brother privately, then with a witness, then to the gathered body. Responsible citizens. Correct neighbors without filming for fame. Write it down. Accountability is love with a backbone. Let me show you a picture so you can see responsibility with skin. In Rivermont, Storm Sable overflowed the creek and buried Oak Street in mud. The city was stretched thin. On Oak Street lived a nurse, a carpenter, a barber, and a widow with a garden. The nurse mapped the medical needs and checked on the elderly every morning. The carpenter led a crew of teenagers, yes, teenagers, to build temporary steps where porches were unsafe. The barber turned his shop into a message hub whiteboard on the window. Who needs what? Who can do what? The widow brought seeds from her shed, and she and the children planted a quick crop of greens in the schoolyard beds to feed volunteers. They didn't wait for a ribbon cutting. They deployed. In 30 days, Oak Street had fewer complaints than any ward. Their taxes were the same as everyone else's. Their posture was different. Be fruitful. Produce a result on your block. Multiply, train 2 more hands to do what you did. Replenish, return what was drained by the storm. Subdue, organize the chaos into a process, have dominion, sustain the standard, so storms meet a system, not a scramble. Write that down and say it. I run the Genesis 1:28 operating system in my lane. Now, practical steps for your domain, because this must move from sermon to schedule. Number 1, own a square. Draw a map of your influence, the 10 houses around you, the floor of your building, the corner of your campus. Claim it as your stewardship zone. Put your name on it before heaven. Number 2, convene a 5-person circle. Meet once a month for 1 hour. Agenda: what's broken, what's working, what we will do in 7 days. Not what they will do, what we will do. Number 3, learn the levers. Who do we call? What is the process? What forms? Put in a shared folder. Knowledge removes excuses. Number 4, pay and prove. If you owe, pay. If you gave, show the receipt. Post a simple ledger for your circle. Sunlight builds trust. Number 5, show up in body, not just in comments. If there's a town hall, sit in the room. If there is a cleanup, bring a broom. Number 6, measure and publish. Track 1 metric: trash bags filled, students tutored, potholes filled, lights restored. When people see progress, they bring energy. Number 7, train your house. Dinner once a week is civic night. Each person reports one thing they learned about the city and one way they contributed. Luke 16:10. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Say these declarations with me until they brand your soul. I am not a spectator. I am a steward. I don't wait for permission to do what is right. I render to all their dues. I seek the peace of my city, for in its peace I have peace. Jeremiah 29:7. I am fruitful in my block. I multiply competence. I replenish what storms drain. I subdue chaos with process, and I walk in dominion with humility. If I don't deploy myself, I will be employed by someone else's fear. Therefore, I deploy now. Hear the wisdom of Scripture again as we pivot. How good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. Psalm 133:1. Responsibility thrives where there is a shared story. Neighbors, not tribes. A we, not just a me. We have picked up our shovels. Now we must agree on why we are shoveling together. That is the next foundation: unity and identity. Because a nation of responsible strangers will still fracture. But a nation of responsible neighbors will stand in any storm. Let's walk there next. Unity, write this down, is not sameness. Unity is shared commitment to a common purpose and mutual dignity. Sameness is cheap. It requires no wisdom. Unity is costly. It requires honor. Ephesians 4:3 says, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Make every effort, because storms will make you make excuses. Unity is agreement on destination and respect on the journey. Amos 3:3 asks, can two walk together unless they be agreed? Agreed on what? Not hairstyles, not accents, not parties or personalities. Agreed on purpose. Purpose is the compass. Dignity is the road. Say it. We agree on purpose. We guard dignity. Jesus was asked, who is my neighbor? And he answered, with a foreigner, the Samaritan, the wrong tribe, the wrong accent, who crossed lines to deliver care. Luke 10. The Lord refused to let ethnicity define neighbor. He let mercy define neighbor. Write that down. Mercy is the password to neighbor. If your doctrine of identity cannot make you stop for a bleeding stranger, throw it away. God's image, Genesis 1:26, is stamped on every human, not just your algorithm-approved circle. The first constitution of any nation is Imago Dei, the image of God in man. If you cancel that constitution, you will cancel your country. Now let me speak to this modern idolatry on every side called identity politics. Identity politics, left, right, blue, red, whatever color you painted, becomes a substitute religion when it offers meaning, enemies, and belonging, then demands sacrifice. Listen to the liturgy. It preaches a gospel of grievance. We are righteous because they are wicked. It ordains high priests on screens who interpret the sacred text of outrage. It offers sacraments, hashtags, signals, boycotts, purity tests. It builds altars, platforms where we sacrifice neighbors by humiliation. It requires tithes, time, clicks, money, paid faithfully in anger. And its heaven is not shared flourishing. Its heaven is the day our tribe finally dominates. Galatians 3:28 shatters that altar. There is neither Jew nor Greek, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Write this down. When your identity is built by who you hate, your collapse is worship performed in advance. Storms pour gasoline on tribes. Pressure intensifies instinct. Jesus said, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. Matthew 12:25. Under stress, fearful people make foolish trades. Esau sold his birthright for stew momentary gratification in exchange for generational authority. Genesis 25. Nations do the same when fear promises, give me more power. I'll crush the other tribe. You would trade liberty for the illusion of dominance and wake up owned by the very systems built to protect you. Write this down. Fear will sell you safety and deliver a cage. You cannot out-legislate hatred of the image of God. You cannot out-budget contempt for your neighbor. You cannot out-police a divided house. The issue is not disagreement. Nations are symphonies of difference. The issue is dehumanization. Here is your correction wrapped in authority. Write this down. You cannot build a future with people you refuse to see as human. Say it to your own soul. I see image before issue. I see person before position. I see neighbor before tribe. Vision sees the seed of God in people. Sight only sees labels. The greatest enemy of your vision is your eyes. Close them if you have to and ask the Spirit to show you the person, not the profile. Let me show you a picture so you can feel this in your bones. After Tempest 9 hit Bay Bridge, 2 streets went to work. Banner Block had flags for everything, slogans for every cause, and microphones at every corner. They held rallies for relief, but could not share a rake. Every meeting began with roll calls of identity and ended with accusations. They built committees to name enemies, not teams to move debris. Anchor Lane, just 4 blocks away, did something different. They drafted a one-sentence purpose. We exist to restore every home to livable condition in 60 days with dignity for every resident. They posted it on every door. They created a dignity code. No slurs, no shaming. Disagree in private, decide in public. Protect the vulnerable. The Muslim shopkeeper and the Pentecostal grandmother co-led the supply table. The retired police officer mentored the young activists on logistics. They ate a common pot twice a week. Whosoever brought the pot ate from it. Children from 3 languages ran the tool library, checking out hammers like books. In 14 days, Anchor Lane cleared every yard. In 28, their school reopened. In 61, they hosted a block party with testimonies, not talking points. Banner Block still argued about which truck should be allowed to park near which sign. A house divided cannot stand. A lane united can rebuild. So how do we practice unity like builders, not complainers? 5 actions. Write them down. Number 1, form a common table. Eat together across lines at least twice a month. Food disarms fear. The early church broke bread with glad and sincere hearts. Acts 2:46. At the table, ban the news channel and open the story channel. Where were you born? What do you love? What do you fear? What can you do? Number 2, draft a shared purpose statement for your block, school, or team. 1 sentence, not a paragraph. Put it on doors, emails, and agendas. Every debate must pass through that sentence. Number 3, adopt a dignity code. Words build worlds. Ban contempt. Require curiosity. Let your speech be always with grace. Colossians 4:6. Correct in private, decide in public, protect the absent. Number 4, bridge in pairs. Assign cross-tribe partners for projects. A business owner with a youth leader, a veteran with a social worker, a pastor with an atheist, teacher. Proximity births empathy. Collaboration births respect. Number 5, serve together and measure together. Choose 1 outcome, yards cleared, lunches delivered, resumes built, and publish progress weekly. When people see fruit, suspicion fades. The world doesn't eat chance, the world eats fruit. Produce something together. Let me add a hard practice for your house. Pray blessing over the other tribe by name. Jesus said, bless them that curse you, Matthew 5:44. It is hard to demonize who you pray for daily and tell your neighbor literally, you are safe with me. Safety is the soil of unity. Unity is the shield in storms. Now hear this bridge to the next pillar. Because unity must eat. Social cohesion is not a campfire song. It is a supply chain of trust. It is sustained by economic opportunity and productive systems. Idle hands become keyboards of contempt. Shared work becomes an anthem. When we produce together, we protect each other's tomorrow. When we only protest together, we audition for tomorrow's fight. Be fruitful. Create value in your lane. Multiply scale solutions beyond your street. Replenish. Restore what storms drain. Subdue. Turn chaos into process. Have dominion. Sustain a standard that outlives the news cycle. That is not just theology. It is economics. Say these declarations with me. I am a neighbor, not a tribe. I see God's image in every person. I agree on purpose and guard dignity. I refuse to trade liberty for the illusion of dominance. I build bridges with tools, not altars with enemies. And I will put my hands to productive work that feeds unity, not starves it. Because the next foundation is our economic fruit, what we produce, not what we consume. If unity is the glue, productivity is the grain. Let's go there next and make the storm serve our future. Unity must eat. I told you that. The table needs grain. Productivity is the grain. Write this down. Storms don't destroy economies. They expose who is producing and who is pretending. Genesis 1:28 is not poetry. It is policy. Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion. That is the 5-step economic engine of any people. Fruitful, produce something tangible from your seed. Multiply, systematize, and scale. Replenish, build, distribution that keeps shelves and services supplied. Subdue, standardize, regulate quality, tame chaos into process. Have dominion, set the benchmark so others take your turns. Say it out loud. The world doesn't eat seeds, produce something. Now take the seed to fruit paradigm and put it over a nation. Seeds are ideas, natural resources, location, culture, and talent. They look impressive in a brochure. They do not feed a people. A nation that stores ideas in meetings, parks minerals in the ground, exports raw materials without value adding, and buries talent in entertainment alone, is a nation with a pantry full of seeds and a table with no bread. Proverbs 14:23 declares, in all labor there is profit, but idle chatter leads only to poverty. Idle chatter is the conference without the factory, the vision board without the workshop, the policy without the plan. Write this down. Prosperity is the conversion of seeds into fruit. The world can consume products, services, and innovations. Let me diagnose this with love and authority. Many nations, some of you listening right now, have a celebrity economy, not a citizen economy. You import almost everything you use. You export your brightest minds to someone else's payroll. You entertain each other and call it GDP. That is consumption dressed as celebration. The storm comes, it always does, and the containers stop. The grid shakes. The logistics break. Suddenly you learn you cannot eat likes. You cannot weld with slogans. You cannot build bridges without rage. You must produce. You must convert the gift of timber into tables, the gift of ore into tools, the gift of wind into energy, the gift of culture into curriculum that trains world-class craftsmen and coders, not just excellent choirs. Here is your national fruit audit. Write it down and take it home. What do we physically make with our hands, machines, and minds? What service can we export beyond our borders with predictable excellence? What skills are we multiplying at scale? Welders, machinists, software engineers, nurses, farmers, logistics coordinators, tool makers? What percentage of our exports are raw materials versus value-added goods? How many enterprises can fulfill a purchase order without borrowing character? What do people around the world think of first when they think of us, our Whopper? If you cannot answer those questions, the storm already answered them for you. The hand of the diligent will rule, but the lazy will be put to forced labor. Proverbs 12:24. Diligence is not merely effort, it is skilled effort that becomes a system. Let me show you this in a story. The coastal nation of Maruva had marula trees everywhere, seeds in the sand, fruit underfoot, goats eating what tourists photographed. For years, they exported raw nuts by the container. Cheap then bought imported lotions at premium. One cyclone, Harim, shut the port for 8 weeks. Shelves went empty, tempers went high, and unity began to starve. A young chemical engineer, Lindy, said, "We are tripping over oil and begging for balm." She convened a small circle, an agronomist, a marketer, a finance teacher, and a grandmother with formula secrets. And in a rented kitchen, they pressed their own oil, mixed small batch creams, and sold them in brown paper with a stamp. Maruva made. Be fruitful. A retired factory supervisor helped them document the process and trained 10 more teams across 3 districts. Multiply. The truckers formed a co-op to move inputs and finished goods between villages, even while the port crawled. Replenish. They created a quality code, viscosity, purity, packaging, all published on a chalkboard, and any batch below the mark went back to the press. Subdue. In 18 months, when the port was healthy again, a South American distributor signed a contract on Maruva's terms because the brand meant something. Dominion. The storm did not destroy Maruva. It exposed that its people had oil in their hands the whole time. Now hear the moral dimension. Because economics is never neutral. Jobs do more than pay rent. They dignify the soul, anchor families, and cool tempers. Give me neither poverty nor riches, lest I be poor and steal. Proverbs 30:8-9. Opportunity stretches patience. When a youth can see a path from apprenticeship to paycheck to problem-solving business, he postpones the riot for the workshop. When a mother can turn a recipe into a registered product with a market, she fuels hope more than hashtags. Despair accelerates chaos. A job is not just employment. It is therapy for a restless nation. Write that down. Dignity is an economic policy. Let me correct a deception with prophetic clarity. Consumption is not productivity. Borrowing to buy is not wealth. It is mortgage appetite. Governments can stimulate purchasing, but if you do not stimulate production, you will stimulate inflation, envy, and debt. A nation that consumes more than it creates is fragile in storms. A nation that creates more than it consumes can bless others in storms. Joseph in Egypt did not pray away famine. He built silos, systems, and supply routes. There was bread in all the land of Egypt, Genesis 41:54-57, because a producer led, not a spender. Say this to your soul. I will not be a national liability. I will be a national asset. So how do we build fruit? Not just slogans. Start where you are, because that is where your authority lives. Deuteronomy 8:18 says, remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you power to get wealth. Power means capacity, skills, networks, discipline to create value. Translate that into 3 moves you can make this month. First, map the value chain in one problem you face. If your hospital imports gloves, who could cut, stitch, and sterilize locally? If your farmers lose half their harvest to spoilage, who can build cold storage and packaging within 50 kilometers? If your schools import desks, who can turn fallen trees into furniture with a standard plan? Every problem is a business. Second, build apprenticeships as normal life, not charity. Pair masters with teenagers, carpenters with coders, nurses with high schoolers, electricians with sons and daughters. Do you see a man skilled in his work? He will stand before kings. Proverbs 22:29. Skill is the passport. Mentorship is the embassy. Third, aggregate small producers into big orders. One seamstress cannot fill a 5,000 uniform contract. 20 with a pattern, quality code, and shared brand can. Unity becomes a supply chain. Infrastructure and institutions matter, yes. You need roads that last, power that stays, internet that doesn't sleep, and a justice system that makes contracts meaningful. Selective enforcement is corrosion to commerce. If bribes decide bids, excellence will immigrate. But hear me, while we demand reform, we deploy responsibility. While we advocate for rule of law, we rule our lane by law. Clear standards, receipts, quality checks, delivery on time, and truth in invoices. Rebuilding starts locally because that is where control is possible. You can open a Saturday Maker Lab in a church hall. You can start a neighborhood tool library so projects don't stall. You can host a Ship Something Sunday where 5 small businesses batch, box, and deliver orders beyond your zip code. You can choose one exportable skill and train 10 more people in 90 days. Be fruitful. Launch one product or service your community will pay for. Multiply. Document the process so it outlives you. Replenish. Build a delivery rhythm that customers can set their clocks by. Subdue. Instill a quality code everyone can recite. Have dominion. Own a niche so tight the market thinks of you first. Let me give you one more picture to set your faith on fire. In Ironfield County, the storm cracked bridges and cut off imports. The city panicked for machine parts. A quiet machinist named Caleb had an old CNC mill in his garage, his seed. He called 5 friends. 1 ran CAD, 1 knew procurement, 1 taught high school metalwork, 2 were precision hobbyists. They met in the school shop, cleared junk, set up 3 stations, and printed the first replacement brackets in 48 hours. Be fruitful. The high schoolers joined, learned, and doubled output in a week. Multiply. A local biker club volunteered as couriers. Parts moved in labeled boxes with inspection tags. Replenish. They set tolerances on a whiteboard, checked every 10th part, and tracked failure rates. Subdue. Within a month, a regional manufacturer signed them as an approved vendor. Dominion. Crime dipped that month. Not because slogans change, but because skills pay. Say these declarations until your hands move. I carry seeds, but I produce fruit. I do not wait for containers. I build capacity. I convert ideas into invoices. Invoices into integrity. Integrity into influence. I am fruitful in my lane. I multiply excellence. I replenish what storms drain. I subdue chaos with systems. I walk in dominion with service. And as we close this pillar, remember the scale of national productivity is built on the scaffolding of local discipline. Institutions that distribute opportunity fairly, schools that teach mastery, roads that carry goods, courts that honor contracts are essential, and we will pursue them. But you begin where your hand can reach. In the next movement, I will show you exactly how to reset the foundation in your domain so your street becomes a factory of hope and your house becomes a seedbed of solutions. The storm is not your sentence. It is your summons to produce. Now write that down and get ready to build. Now we turn from critique to commission. You cannot command the headlines, but you can command your house. You may not control the treasury, but you can control your table. You might not set national policy today, but you can set policy in your domain. Write that down. Dominion begins with domain. What is your domain? It is the territory of your responsibility. Your home, your block, your school, your church, your workplace team, your committee seat, your city council district. Luke 16:10 says, he who is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. If you want to rebuild a nation, repair the gates nearest your house first. Nehemiah 3 records that each family fixed a wall opposite their home. That is strategy, not sentiment. Dominion, listen, is not domination of people. It is mastery of problems and stewardship of places. Dominion is competence over chaos. Dominion is systems that serve others so well that they trust your leadership without you begging. Say it out loud. My dominion is my domain done well. If you don't deploy yourself, you'll be employed. If you won't rule your lane by law, someone else will rent your attention with outrage. Write this down and put on your fridge. I will not outsource my foundation. So here is your local foundation reset, a checklist that mirrors the nation, because nations are the multiplication of households. Number 1, purpose. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Proverbs 29-18. Write your household constitution, one sentence that defines why your family exists. Joshua 24:15 is a good model. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Refine it to your assignment. We exist to build wisdom, practice hospitality, and produce solutions for our community. Put it where eyes land: fridge, door, screensaver, front hallway. Do the same for your block, your small business, your ministry team. Habakkuk 2:2 commands: write the vision and make it plain, that he may run who reads it. If they cannot read it, they cannot run. Number 2, values the invisible constitution. List 5 non-negotiables that will govern your domain for a home: honesty, diligence, respect, generosity, and excellence. For a team, truth in metrics, dignity in speech, deliver on time, fix together, not blame alone, continuous learning, post them, teach them, test decisions by them. Values: tell your guests what house they entered, and tell your children what kind of adults they are becoming. Tell your neighbor, values are guardrails for purpose. Number 3, law and justice, clear rules, consistent application. Selective enforcement in your house will produce rebellion in your street. Parents, listen, if one child lies and gets a lecture, and another lies and gets a laugh, you are training corruption. Set rules with reasons. Agree consequences in advance, and let mercy be orderly, not random. In your workplace team, write standard operating procedures that a new hire can follow on day 3. In your church, set financial controls that make integrity non-negotiable. In your homeowners association, write conflict processes that protect the weak from the loud. Psalm 89:14, righteousness and justice are the foundation of your throne. If God builds on justice, so must your kitchen table. Number 4, leadership inspiration, not manipulation. In crisis, people don't need louder bosses. They need trustworthy leaders. Jesus said, I have given you an example. Wash one another's feet. John 13:15. Lead by serving first. Take the worst job, go first in sacrifice, protect the absent, and give credit forward. Parents, apologize when you miss it. It builds authority. Managers, remove bottlenecks. Don't become one. Pastors, equip saints for work. Don't entertain spectators. Ephesians 4:12. Say it. I lead by lifting. Number 5, responsibility. Citizenship is stewardship, not spectatorship. Teach your children responsibility. Assign roles and rotate them. Budget captain, meal lead, chore chief, schedule steward, tie allowance to contribution, not cuteness. Mentor one young person. Bring them into your process, not just your podium. Make them measure progress with you. Every man shall bear his own load. Galatians 6:5. In your block, assign zones. Who checks on elders? Who tracks tool library inventory? Who manages the WhatsApp channel? Who liaises with city services? Stop waiting for they. Be the they. Write that down. Number 6, unity and identity, conflict resolution on purpose. Draft a dignity code for your domain. No slurs, no shouting matches in public threads, correct in private, decide in public, protect the vulnerable. When conflict rises, follow Matthew 18. Go to your brother first. If not resolved, bring a witness, then involve the larger body. Train your mouth to bless. Pray for the other tribe. Eat together twice a month. Unity is not a campfire song. It is a rhythm of respect. Say it. We agree on purpose and guard dignity. Number 7, productivity projects that produce fruit, not just meetings that produce minutes. Choose one community project every quarter. Garden to pantry pipeline for widows. Uniform co-op for the school. Resume clinic in the church hall. Saturday Maker Lab for teens. Tool library with checkout codes. Public data board tracking pothole reports and fixed dates. Measure outputs and publish progress. The world doesn't eat seeds, produce something. Be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, and have dominion over one problem this quarter. Let me ground this in pictures so it sticks. Sister Althea in Riverview wrote a household constitution on a yellow card. We exist to know God, learn daily, and solve problems. She added a law. No screens after 8 books open, 15 minutes of teach back at the table. In 6 months, her son's grades rose 2 letters and her daughter started a weekend biscuit cart with their values stamped on the bag. Be fruitful. On Maple Street, 7 houses created a block mission. Restore and beautify every frontage in 30 days. They named a paint captain, a cleanup lead, and a city liaison. They asked 2 retired men to mentor 4 teens on tool safety. In 3 weeks, property pride replaced petty fights, multiply. At Westview Assembly, the deacons set a dignity code and a procurement policy, 3 bids, minimum, decisions by published criteria. Giving went up because trust went up. Replenish. At the parts plant, Team Delta wrote their own SOPs, set a quality target, and halve defects in 60 days. Subdue. City Hall called their supervisor to teach other teams. Dominion. Now, involvement in governance is not optional for rebuilders. Show up to local meetings. Your voice at the school board shapes the curriculum that shapes your future co-workers. Sit in the budget hearing. Money reveals values. Ask to see procurement criteria. Excellence immigrates when bribes immigrate. Run for the seat if you must. Even 1 term of principal service can reset norms. Proverbs 31:8-9 says, open your mouth for the speechless. Plead the cause of the poor and needy. Steward your seat as an altar of service, not a stage for ego. Listen, this is how nations turn. Not by waiting for the palace, but by ruling the porch. Not by scrolling outrage, but by scheduling outcomes. Not by rehearsing what we cannot control, but by mastering what we can. Vision over sight now. The greatest enemy of your vision is your eyes. Close them for a moment and see with me. See your breakfast table as a boardroom of destiny, where children recite the family mission and report their small wins. See your block at dusk. Porch lights on. A workbench hum in a garage. Teenagers checking out drills like books. Elders waving because they're seen. See your school with a hall of trades. Coding lab, sewing room, welding bay, financial literacy corner, and a board that tracks apprenticeships like trophies. See your church foyer on a Tuesday night. Resumes reviewed, contracts explained, bitterness repented, dignity restored. See City Hall surprised because your domain delivers reports with fruit, not fumes. Say these declarations with authority until your habits change. I govern my domain by purpose, not by panic. I write my household constitution and live by it. I am a servant leader. I inspire. I do not manipulate. I teach responsibility and I carry my load. I agree on purpose and guard dignity in conflict. I show up to meetings and shape decisions with integrity. I produce fruit in my lane until my lane becomes a model. Be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, have dominion in my house, on my block, in my team. This is your commission preview. The storm is not your sentence. It is your summons to build foundations in the territory you can touch. In a moment, I will lead you into declarations for builders, not complainers, and send you from this room as architects of tomorrow. But tonight, before you sleep, write the first line of your household constitution and set your first small project date. Vision moves when pens move. Write that down and let's get ready to speak our future into disciplined action. Lift your eyes above the headlines. The news shows the storm. Vision shows the foundation you can lay today. Sight is noise. Vision is navigation. We look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. 2 Corinthians 4:18. Write this down. The storm is not your sentence, it is your summons to build. The camera pans across lightning. Wisdom points to blueprints. The wind screams. The wise man digs. Jesus said, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall. Matthew 7:24-25. No de-order, hearing and doing, plans and practice, rock before rain. Now, identity must shift before systems can stand. Nations don't collapse because storms are strong. Nations collapse because people forget who they are. You are not a victim of climate or committee. You are a steward of a domain. You are not a consumer of someone else's excellence. You are a producer in your lane. You are not a complainer rehearsing grievances. You are a builder releasing solutions. Builders outlast storms because builders plant rock under what matters. Say it. I am not waiting for rescue. I am taking responsibility. Proverbs 29:18 warns, where there is no vision, the people perish. But it also implies the opposite. Where vision governs, people flourish. Write that down. My future is a product of my foundations, not my feelings. Let me lead you now out loud with authority into declarations that reset identity and ignite action. Say it with your chest and with your pen. Ready? I am necessary. Say it again. I am necessary. I am God's response to a need He created. I am a solution to a problem in my community. I will not offer excuses. I will offer evidence. I will produce fruit, not just opinions. The world doesn't eat seeds. I will produce something. Be fruitful, multiply, replenish, subdue, have dominion in my house, on my block, in my team. I lead through inspiration, not manipulation, generated by conviction, motivated by vision, fueled by passion, producing inspiration, releasing influence. Say it. I lead by serving first. I govern my domain by purpose, not by panic. I write the vision and make it plain. My house has a constitution. My team has a code. I am a steward, not a spectator. I carry my load. I teach responsibility. I multiply skills. Every problem is a business. Every pain is an assignment. I agree on purpose and guard dignity in conflict. I bless. I build. I bridge. I see neighbors, not tribes. I am diligent. My hands are skilled. I convert ideas into invoices. Invoices into integrity. Integrity into influence. I am a rebuilder of foundations. They shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in. Isaiah 58:12. That is my name in this city. Now, declarations are seeds. Action is fruit. In the next 7 days, before another news cycle steals your momentum, I charge you to choose one measurable action that strengthens a local foundation. Write this down and put a date beside it before you leave. Host a family mission night. Read your household constitution aloud. Set 3 simple laws. Assign roles and post them where eyes land. Measure it. Every person signs it. Lead a 2-hour neighborhood cleanup on your block. Pick the stretch. Recruit 5 houses. Log the bags filled and deliver a report with pictures to your counselor. Measure it. Bags counted. Volunteers named. Tutor 2 students for 90 minutes, math, reading, or resume writing. Hold it at the church hall or your living room. Measure it. Specific skills improved. Next session, schedule. Run a basic budgeting class for your friend group. Cash flow, envelopes, debt snowball. No shame, just skill. Measure it. 4 people leave with a written budget and a savings target. Form a civic study circle. Read the city charter or school board policy. Map one procurement process and assign a representative to attend the next meeting. Measure it. 1 question asked on record. Validate a small business idea. Make 10 units. Sell 5 at cost. Collect feedback. Refine the process. Measure it. Documented steps. Break-even math. Next batch date. Or open a Saturday tool library for your street label, log, and loan. Measure it. Checkouts recorded. 1 shared project completed. Don't try all. Choose one. Excellence grows by focus. Joshua didn't rebuild Jerusalem in a week. Nehemiah repaired the wall nearest his house first and then multiplied teams. Hear me, schedule it now. Recruit 2 allies within 24 hours. Set a simple metric. Publish your progress. Write that down. Plan, partner, publish. And as you act, keep your inner ear tuned to heaven's operating system. Genesis 1:28 is still non-negotiable policy. Be fruitful, make something, multiply, teach someone, replenish, deliver consistently, subdue, standardize quality, have dominion, own a niche. This is not Sunday poetry, this is Monday practice. When you see wind, don't whine, work the sequence. When you feel rain, don't retreat, reinforce the process. When thunder shouts, let your system speak louder. I speak over you with pastoral authority and marketplace clarity. You are builders, not beggars. You are architects, not addicts. You are stewards, not spectators. You were born to master something. What's your whopper? Master your lane until the market thinks of you first. If you don't deploy yourself, you'll be employed by someone else's vision forever. Today we flip that script, deploy. Finally, seal this in your spirit and your schedule. Storms don't destroy nations. Storms expose what the nation was built on. Therefore, build what survives pressure. Lay rock under your porch. Pour truth into your table. Write law on your wall. Plant skill in your sons and daughters. Practice justice in your invoices. Produce fruit that can feed a street. And when the winds come, and they will, you will not fear the forecast, because you know your foundation. I commission you now in the name of the King as repairers of the breach and restorers of streets to dwell in. Go home and write the date of your 7-day action. Text your 2 allies before you reach the parking lot. Tomorrow, buy the supplies. This week, deliver the fruit. Next month, report the outcomes. And when we gather again, I don't want to hear storms. I want to see structures. Say it one more time. Until heaven and your habits agree. The storm is not my sentence. It is my invitation to build. Now go build.